All right. Are you ready? All right. We'll give it a name so that we get something on the board right away. The birth of the solar system. Last time we looked at the fourth great period of time in the development of the cosmos, that which is called the Earth period. And we looked only at the first three revolutions through all of the globes. We looked at the Saturn revolution when the physical body was recapitulated, the Sun revolution in which the vital body was recapitulated, and the Moon revolution in which the desire body was recapitulated. In all of these cases, we looked at the recapitulation with regard to three different things. One, the anticipation of the mind. That is a vehicle of thought and concrete consciousness that was to interpenetrate the vehicles that were being redeveloped in the first three revolutions. The emphasis on the physical was on the development of a brain and nervous system that could be responsive to thought, and on the extensions of the nervous system to develop perception. The etheric vehicle was developed in such a way that the memories could be brought in, and that there would be a transport of impressions that came through the physical body. And then we talked about the development, recapitulation of the desire body, and in the recapitulation of the desire body, we talked about a stratification of it, such that in those of humanity that were ready for it, the baser desires were separated. Now, that's a difficult concept. I think the separation was more in consciousness than in, like we think of milk floating on cream. That's like an actual physical separation. There was a distinct difference between the desires that had to do purely with physical selfish interest and those that simulated soul states, that simulated spiritual states. The higher three regions of the desire body came together with the mind and formed what was called the second self, or the lower self, or the personal ego. And all of this was in preparation for the birth of the divinity that each of us is becoming. And there was a realization that in order for a spiritual intelligence to be able to express itself in creation, there had to be a mind, and all of the vehicles had to be responsive to that mind. Moreover, since it was going to take a long, long time to become spiritually self-conscious, to become awake, and to take over and control our lives, we had to have the second self, the false ego, in order to act as an instinctual mechanism to give a personality something to take care of itself, because when an individuality is born, it is a god. And being a god, it gets the reverence and respect from everything in the cosmos, including the Almighty, such that nothing can interfere with its creative freedom. So the second self was there as a protective mechanism. And finally, we had to develop for the consolidation into solid matter. we had to get ready for this kind of experience with its externality and its segregation and separation, which haven't been ours at any other time in evolution but the time we are in right now. All right. We're going to continue to look over these things that were recapitulated in the first three revolutions for coming weeks, but now we're ready to talk about something else. We're going to talk about the birth of the solar system, but in order to do that, we have to recapitulate a few other things and look at a few other things. And the first of them is a callback to the conception that we spent a whole talk about, the conception of rest. We talked about between the periods there being great rests wherein all of the evolving beings dissolve all of their manifest characteristics. And when they are so simplified that there is a complete unity between the most highly evolved and the most lowly evolved, something very wonderful happens, that the experience of each is given to the whole, and in that process of taking individual experience and putting it into the whole, it takes on, it's sort of like, because we make that sacrifice and give that gift to the whole without any real self, the experience takes on a different quality, so that when we reawaken our being, we reawaken at a much higher level. It isn't just because we have had the experiences of the Saturn period as a mineral that we can be reborn as in the Sun period as a plant-like. It isn't just because of those experiences. And it isn't just because of the plan, that the plan is set up that one goes through these different stages one after another. It is because we gave something. We said very early on that everything in the cosmos has a use, and not merely a physical use. We weren't just banged around in the Saturn period to provide form only like we use the minerals now with complete irreverence. We gave something spiritually in our receptivity. And because we gave something and we give it all up in this deep rest, when we get it back, it has been enhanced by the spirituality of the whole. And then when it's enhanced, it gives us the big steps in evolution, like a kingdom's difference, the difference between a mineral-like kingdom and a plant-like kingdom. In fact, that's pretty much a general principle, that if you wish to enhance the depth of the spirituality of something, you have to give it over to the universe, to the whole, and lay no hawks on it for yourself. And only then can it be transformed in such a way that when it is given back to you, that it becomes much, much deeper and much better. Now, in the same way that the periods of time are analogously replicated in the different globes, like there's a Saturn period, and in the Saturn period there's a Saturn globe and a Sun globe and a Moon globe. And in the same way that the principles of the different periods are replicated in the revolutions of consciousness, there also is a replication of what takes place in the cosmic nights. And what takes place in the cosmic nights, it's like, in the same way that there's a rest between each period, there's also a rest between each evolution. And those rests are given different names. The rests between the given periods are called cosmic nights. And those that are between revolutions are called chaos. A very specific type of term. Now, there is a difference. The difference is that the activity in chaos is not as deep and not as extensive as it is in the cosmic nights. It's sort of like the more you are in the manifest activity, the less deep the rest period becomes. There's a very simple reason for that. What do they call it? They call it in athletics or even in politics, they call it big mo. They call it momentum. That when you're accomplishing something, if you're on a streak and you're outscoring the other team in basketball, like 8 times down the court you've scored when they haven't, they say you have no momentum and you don't want to take a rest there. That's when the opposing coach takes a rest. Because taking a rest and making a rest that is too deep breaks down momentum. And sort of like when you're making your move, when you're accomplishing something, you don't want the rest. And if you do, you don't want the rest to be too deep. So what we're saying also then is if we're trying to reduplicate the cosmic experience in a prayer period, for example, that we go into a prayer and we go in deep and then we come out in rest. And we go deeper again in rest, and then we go deeper yet in rest. But that the deeper in we go, the less intense the rest is until after it's all over. And then there's sort of a quiet listening period, which is when a lot of the creativity takes place and a lot of the new innovation takes place in the rest after all the work of the prayer or meditation or thought period has been finished. And so this is one of the reasons why the rests are not so deep. So there is an order. The difference is a difference of order as to how deep a rest period goes. It's sort of like more it is meant for just remembering and just a little assimilation and not for doing the really deep creative work. You realize that this works down to all the different levels. Somewhere down the line here, there are rests in between cosmic nights and chaos, but somewhere down the line here is interlife rest. That between each incarnation we rest. And somewhere in between there is winter. Because from a manifest activity, winter is a kind of a rest. And then finally we come down to sleep. Is also a rest. If you're like me, you take a little time out every now and then, or you take little naps that really aren't loss of consciousness naps. We're talking about something that changes, that the rests are on different levels, and what is accomplished by them is much different. There are analogous activities. Between lives, there are big remembrances, but they're not as big as the remembrances in chaos. And even when we go to sleep at night, we remember the entire past day, which is why so many of our dreams are impregnated by the activities of the preceding day, because we're mulling over them. Very often, if we didn't manifest well enough, when we mull over them, we're still attached to them, and we don't really digest and assimilate them, and then we have horrid dreams, and we have symbols saying, hey, you're not taking care of something, and you have to get back to this. In fact, all the principles of recapitulation, of going through the analogy of all of the cosmic nights and all of the revolutions and such like that, also takes place in sleep. And very often when we have to touch base and come back to a thing that we're working on again, we have repetitive dreams. And repetitive dreams, I think the interpretation of psychologists of repetitive dreams is perfectly all right, but this is another way of looking at it that adds another dimension to it. So this is more like the differentiation that takes place between chaos and cosmic nights. The order of difference is more like if you look at seeds, and you plant seeds, and then you take the seeds from the plants, and you do this for several generations. What takes place is you can breed and you can make a new species of plant where it's a deeper pink instead of a lighter pink. It's like a smaller differentiation, whereas the rest that is of a cosmic night is of such an order that something that is plant-like comes out from that kind of rest activity with a whole new creative power and comes out as an animal-like being. All right. Now we want to recapitulate one more thing that we talked about with the Earth period and some of the analogies of the Earth period. We said last time that human beings were very unique beings. We said, for one, that we had our very first stage in the first stage of the cosmos. And that when the cosmos becomes the most manifest and outward in the manifestation of this kind of stuff is when we also are at our highest development with our first vehicle, with the physical vehicle. And that makes us a very, as Paul says in the Bible, it makes us a very special first fruits. We are the pacemaker for this particular solar cosmos. We represent it more than, we as humanity represent this cosmos more than any other of the creative hierarchies. Well, the same thing that is true of one of the uniquenesses of human beings as we are right now is also true of the cosmos. We now have our physical body in the physical world and our vital body in the lively etheric world and our desire bodies in the colorful desire world. Whereas previously, this is the first time that our physical body has actually been right in the physical world. And in that we are like the cosmos. So for the first time, the 7 manifest globes are in the foremost manifest regions. They're in the region of solids, liquids, gases, and chemical ether. And so the 7 globes are in their most manifest sense, and our 4 vehicles are also associated with the 4 most deeply manifest states of being. Now, it's an interesting thing that in the transcending realms, that is the region, if we go way up the line here now, if we say that the physical body is in this, and the etheric is in the etheric world, and the desire is in the desire world, and the mind is in the mental world, those are also the foremost in the 7 planes that we're actively manifest in, that we are reduplicated there also. In the transcendent realms, the region of human spirit, or ideational thought, and in the life spirit, in the region of divine spirit, the realms of chaos, the 5 globes of chaos, are equally divided between those 3 realms. So we're at a very unique turning time of the cosmos. And this puts us in such a place that we can see things externally, and it's the first and only time really that there is a separation between all of the internalizing aspects of the spirit as it works into manifestation and the external standing for itself. The external stands out as a glory all to itself alone. All right. I was afraid this was going to happen. All right. Okay, I guess we are ready. I want to talk about one more thing that really isn't well said in the notes. Last time we said we regrouped all of the different angelologies in a different way. And that's an interesting thing also, that of those left among us, they're also divided into 5 and 7. I guess I better not talk about that. This is a little bit divided talk. All right, we're now ready to talk about the birth of the solar system. Now, if we look at the birth of the solar system as described by material science, it is described very mechanistically, and it's described as something that happens by itself, and it's described as something that happens with a combination of random events, but also that when a given random condition occurs, that because the principles of nature are as they are, then it must manifest in the organization that it manifests in. Well, the spiritual view on all of creation and evolution is completely contrary to that. There are mistakes, but there are no random happenings. Almost everything is planned. There is spontaneous creativity, but there are no random happenings. Things don't just happen by chance. And also from the spiritual point of view, there are no blind laws, but what are seen as laws by scientists are seen from the spiritual points of view as the manifestation of intelligence. Intelligence that is so dispersonal and so perfect that it appears to be a cosmic law. It appears to be a principle rather than a living intelligence. Well, the only thing that we can do that in is we can sometimes become so physically practiced at something that we do it perfectly, or we do it automatically every time. That's just the beginning. Sometime in the distant future, we will be able to hold our consciousness and hold it in such a way that it is an intelligence that has a regularity and that has a rhythm, and that it manifests an expression like the radiance of sun or the waves of particles going out into the world, that is like an intelligent, consistent, reliable manifestation. Now, when the solar system is born, it doesn't happen randomly. There's something that it's apropos to this season, that there's a perfect analogy to what happens between what happens in an egg and a chicken or a little chick coming out of it. Here you just have this fluid of two types, that in the yolk and then in the albumin of the egg. You just have these two fluids, very amorphous, very undifferentiated. And if you watch it, if you could watch it, like with something like etheric vision or with X-ray or ultraviolet or ultrasonic, you would see that out of this liquid, it precipitates a solid chick. It's not a matter of accident. It's a matter of something that is very much planned. There's something very irregular. There's something very intelligent. There's something purposeful. There's something that is guiding this mechanism, and it is not merely a mechanical mechanism, nor is it just a memory that is in the genetic memory. There is an intelligence that is guiding this. Now, in order to understand how all this differentiation takes place, it's helpful if we understand why it takes place. And one of the primary reasons from a human point of view of why we are differentiated into this very separate external world that has so many distractions and so many ramifications that act as distractions, one asks the question, why does this differentiation take place at all? It's clear that the, like our bones, for example, are developed such that they can be as light as possible, taking into account all of the qualities of the earth itself and the way gravity works. The inner guiding intelligence develops the bones such that they know what the world is like. And so when something is becoming manifest and there is an evolutionary progression of greater and greater perfection of divine creation, we anticipate that where we can get the most out of the world and do it with the least amount of effort. And this is sort of one of the reasons why, but the simple reason why, from a human point of view, is why do we differentiate into this world at all, and why with such diversity, and that is experience. Because from the viewpoint of a creature, what brings a creature to the point of a creator is experience. We do not have a dream that is viable unless we take that dream and bring it into experience. And when we bring it into experience, we realize ourselves, the world, and the dream. So experience, from a spiritual point of view, the more experience we get, the more deeply we feel that experience, and the more we garner out of that experience, the more worthwhile our lives are. So this is, you might say, there are three purposes for our whole evolution altogether. Until now, we've just been talking about what takes place. But the three reasons are, one, to develop soul power. Two, to develop a creative mind. To use that soul power and to share it as only the creative consciousness can understand. Unless you create, unless you give, that wonderful feeling of the reason for a creative mind and have the power to be able to utilize it cannot be understood. And in order to accomplish both the soul power and the creative mind, experience. You might say that if one were to ask somebody from the mystery schools why all of this exists at all, these would probably be given as the three primary reasons from a human point of view of why the cosmos exists and why we have undergone this creative evolution in it. And these are the three things. If we are fulfilling these three things, we are then fulfilling the primary purposes and reasons for our existence in the cosmos. Now, there's another reason why this is so careful, why the differentiation and the manifestation is brought to the degree that it is, why it is so controlled the way a chicken is controlled by an egg. Because remember now, we're going into this external world where there will be a difference between subject and object. And that is a very unique kind of experience, especially as we as human beings, we've carried it further than it was intended. And with that overdoing of the activity, this becomes all the more important. This is a beautiful thing that we come to our waking consciousness and we're like little children, just at the very beginning of waking up and knowing what experience means and appreciating what's going on and what it means to the end purposes of our evolution altogether. So we're just waking up like little children. But we're waking up like little children in an external world. And that's beautiful, because when we wake up like this, we're the furthest removed. Right now, the cosmos, right now speaking in terms of millions of years, in its external manifestation is the most far removed from the central waking spiritual consciousness of divinity. It's sort of, when I'm saying removed, I'm not saying physically removed, but it's something like when you say somebody is psychologically distant, that they're not with you, that they're distant, that they're removed. And that's what our consciousness is like. If the spirit is the conscious truth knower, and matter represents an ignorance, it represents a potential that is being brought out of the absolute into consciousness. The more deeply we go into matter, the more we are removed from the spirit. And so like the truth seems so distant. And it's easy to be carried away by the external objects, by the stuff of the world. And for this reason, all of the extra care is taken with regard to manifestation at this particular time of evolution. You see what this means? It's like saying everything is slowed down, because in the spiritual world you don't see things like this. You don't see, like that's got sharp corners. You can bump yourself and hurt yourself even they're that sharp. But in the spiritual worlds there's continuity. There isn't a realm with beginning and end. And this is sort of like seeing a slow motion of a bird flying or of a flurry of activity. It's like what is normally many things happening all at the same time gets slowed down to a stopped action. And when it's slowed down to a stopped action or apparently stopped action, then we can look at one thing at a time, because we don't have to see how everything is related to everything else and everything else. What often happens to people is they almost flip out because when they first have their experiences in the inner worlds, because they can't control that understanding or that experience of how the whole cosmos is in everything, and it's all going on at the same time. That we're blessed to have this very beginning start here that we can take, and we can look at that chair from one point of view at a time. We can look at it and we can turn it and look at another point of view and another point of view. And when we have that kind of objectified, separated, segregated type of existence, it allows more time for the experience to sink in, because we need it, because we're so far removed from the spirit. So this differentiation then is then necessary to see what would otherwise be a blur of emotion, and that doesn't mean we wouldn't get anything out of it, but we wouldn't get as much out of it. It's sort of like you can hear a piece of music. You can appreciate the piece of music. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, it moves you, you find yourself wanting to dance to it or something. But then, if you study music and you understand what's behind it in terms of the way it is developed, then you hear that same piece of music and it's even more meaningful to you. Or if you objectify the feelings, instead of just being carried along by the feelings, if you objectify the feelings and know what they mean, then that piece of music means still more to you. And so what this represents is our experience in the material world as it is now represents the ability to see things individually, separately, first one way and then another and another and another, so that eventually, as we reawaken the deeper spiritual consciousness, the deeper spiritual perceptions, that we will be able to carry the same kind of objectivity and not just be swept along by them in sort of like an innocent mood that we're flowing with it, but we'll be able to be self-conscious in a way that couldn't take place any other way. All right. Oh boy. So then, you can see how this all fits together. it fits together very beautifully that we have the greatest slowness and objectivity at the time that we need it the most. So a little recapitulation. First, in the Sun period and the Saturn period, we just warmed up to things. We were deeply, deeply unconscious. And in the Sun period, we warmed up a little bit more, such that we now had a lively view of things, and things came to light. It wasn't just a dark sensation, but things came to light. And then in the Moon period, we got the feel of things. And when we got the feel of things, we began to know vaguely that there was something about a separate state of being and a separate spiritual consciousness, but the consciousness and the experience were not brought together. So now that we've come to the Earth period, we're about to become separate individuals by experiencing separate entities, separate manifestations, and we're about to bring this to a state of finality or a state of completion. By finality, I don't mean that this is the end of it, but it is now manifest in the way that it is the most itself in its form. Yes.
Although there was the Sun period or the Saturn period or the Moon period or the Earth period, does manifestation exist outside of our experience of it? For instance, would there be manifestation at the very deepest, lowest levels that it is now when there's this Sun period going on?
You mean in the material world?
Right.
No. The material...
It needs our participation to exist.
Yes. And the material world doesn't come into existence until it is needed to come into existence. And it isn't even possible for this world as it is now to come into existence until divinity could concentrate its consciousness that deeply so that it's you might say the meditation of God stands out there as an object. It couldn't possibly have happened because what we're talking about in cosmology, we're talking about the logic of the divine and the process that the divine creates through. And in the same way that it's necessary for us to experience first things as form before we can experience them as life, it is necessary for divinity and all of the hierarchies within divinity to go through these stages before this can even be manifest as it is. There may be other kinds of manifestations going on in other realms that have nothing to do with ours, but I couldn't begin to talk about them.
I mean, theoretically, do you think that divinity could experience the chair regardless of our participation?
No, not externally. That is our gift, and that is our duty. We are the eyes of God in the external world. We have to have every being that is in the cosmos has to be necessary, has to be important, has to have a function. And the question that you're asking was answered in a statement very beautifully by Meister Eckhart, if you're familiar with him. He said, God needs me as much as I need God. And in order for God to reap this kind of experience of this kind of world, God needs us in this sensory sense in order to see the world. God does not have a physical eyeball in the physical world. There is a sense of what that chair is like inwardly, but it's not the same thing as what is given to the divine through our perception. Okay. Now, there may be other realms, as Chris's question just pointed. There may be other realms, but we can't know about them. We can only manifest and experience what we are. We can't manifest something that we aren't. Oh boy. There are lots of examples of this principle. For example, one can't inhabit a body that is more sensitive than the being is. It's like saying you can't, if you're a duffer, you can't pick up a Guarneri violin and get the most out of it. It doesn't make it. You could almost use a cigar box violin and get the same quality. There is a limit to your quality, and anything beyond that quality you can't use. It was so like for a beginner, it doesn't make any difference whether you have an Amati or a Guarneri or a Stradivarius or something like that, or whether you have just a simple violin, because you're not going to do any better. It's only when you develop that kind of sensitivity that you can inhabit that kind of vehicle, that you can express through it. In fact, you'd probably degrade it if you did try to use it, because it's so sensitive, at least when we're talking about physical bodies. We can't build anything that goes beyond our own consciousness. We can't build anything, we can't build a body that is better than our intelligence. The body is a direct manifestation of what we are, where we're at right now in our evolution. It goes just like that. But it can be seen in a different way in matters of perception, the same principle. There are two common phrases. We see what we are, or the way little kids say it, it takes one to know one. If in order to see that somebody is verbally astute, you have to have developed verbal astuteness yourself. Or if you want to see that somebody else is critical, you have to be critical yourself. So we see ourselves in others. It doesn't mean that we don't see others accurately, but we can only see what is ourself. In the same way, we can only manifest what is ourself. We can't make a piece of artwork, or especially a piece of music, that isn't an expression of us. Musicians cannot lie to each other. They can't fake it to each other. What you are is what you create. And this is, but now this gets difficult. We're talking about God couldn't create anything but the solar universe as the solar universe, because that is an expression of what God is. Now that gets to be a very, very difficult question when you're dealing with God, because when you're dealing with the things of the Spirit, you're dealing with what everything, like God is everything that is manifest. So what makes the manifestation of planets or of minerals or such as they are, why that choice within God? Well, if we go right back to our examples, it shows us clearly the way that works. We can't see that somebody else has a bad temper. We can see it, even if we don't have a bad temper ourselves, if we once did have a bad temper. But the things that bother us, if it bothers us that someone is vain, it bothers us because we have that same kind of vanity in ourselves. So we are spirit also, and we can only see in the world what is in ourselves. So what we're doing when we're saying that is it's everything that we see then is true. You might then say that the more that a person perceives, that's the more of an indication of how evolved they are. Or another way of saying it, we see what is most important, what is most right and what is most timely right now. Our pet peeve about someone or about the world is not a statement about the world, but the pet peeve is a representation of the thing that most needs to be changed in ourselves. Okay, so now the same thing then is true with the divine. What is manifest from God is what is most right to be manifest from God, but not in a process of going from consciousness, from unconsciousness to consciousness, but from an internal spiritual logic, so that the things have to manifest as they do as part of a conscious internal logic, even though the internal logic is being impressed into the ignorance of matter, or it is drawing something out of the ignorance of matter and enlightening it and ensouling it. Okay, so this, in a very true sense then, not in a matter of perception, but in the matter of expression, when the Bible says, by their fruits ye shall know them, that is a direct statement of the way the divine works. And the fact that the world is as beautiful as it is, such that even the harshest skeptics and the most selfishly evil people can't help but to see the beauty of the world, even in this realm here where there are so many limitations, is really a statement of how profound the beauty, by the fruits of the divine. It is really something wonderful. And it also gives us a special lesson in a kind of humility. We have to recognize that we may not yet be capable of seeing all the beauties that are there. And it gives us a tendency, it should give us a watchword of not judging too quickly, because we may just be at a cigar box violin level and not yet able to see the beauty in someone, or not yet be able to appreciate the beauty in cosmos. Okay, now this gets into some very, very deep things that I don't know if I'm really wanting to get into. But this says that the whole cosmos existed in potential in the absolute before it was brought to light within the consciousness of God. And this says that there's something that either the logic of it is an arbitrary conditioning by the divine in order to make a logical manifestation. And it's an unusual use of arbitrary and logical, I understand that, but we're talking about something that bridges between the two. Or it states something about the very nature of the unmanifest absolute in itself, or it states something merely about the consciousness of God's experience from the past. But it could be a blend of all three of those. I don't have any final answers to that. I guess I don't want to get into that really transcendental, very abstract thinking again. So, we remember from the very early talks, especially the first two, when we talked about unity knowing itself and polarizing, and then having an outside point such that three represented the first spiritual manifest understanding, and then that three reflected or polarized represented a spirit matter reflective manifestation, and then focused through the center of the pole, going right back to the one, so that you have in the symbol of the macrocosm, you have the one as the central focus, you have the two in the two polarized triangles, and you have the three in the simple completion of the triangle being the first number of lines to enclose space. We're talking about a mathematical logic that applies to the cosmos, and so that with the 1, the 2, and the 3, and the 3, which is the only figure here that's capable of being reflected, it ends up that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. And we said then that 7 turned out to be a number of manifest completion. And we've talked about it in every which way. We've talked about it in terms of 7 manifest colors and 7 manifest tones on the scale, and 7 planes, and 7 principles, and 7 periods, and 7 globes, and 7 revolutions, and we're going to talk about 7 epochs, and all sorts of more things like that. But so we would begin to get the idea then that when the divine made itself manifest, knew itself through its consciousness, that its manifestation would be septenary in nature. We're just sort of anticipating, and that's the way it is. Or at least the way it is to the seers, who see all of this. So we're going to talk about the principle now of internal differentiation and external manifestation and its septenary nature. This is, we're coming now to some very, very heavy sorts of things. We've talked about, last time we talked about the 7 hierarchies that are participating as creative beings right now in the cosmos, that are built into the cosmic framework, and that they relate to the signs between Pisces and Virgo. Pisces being humanity, Aquarius being the angels, Capricorn being the archangels, Sagittarius the lords of mind, Scorpio the lords of form, Sagittarius the Libra the lords of individuality, and Virgo indicating the lords of mind. And that these 7 hierarchies had a necessity to be part of the structure and framework of the cosmos because they came into being as part of the cosmos. They not only do their creative work because they must evolve, but they must do it within this framework because they are part of this framework. Now, these are the most 7 active manifest beings in the solar cosmos right now, at least with regard to all of the kingdoms that we're speaking of, going all the way down to the minerals. They represent a vertical differentiation. Obviously, we're at the foot, and it goes all the way up to the guts, and everything up here is represented by even higher beings that are much more free, which is an interesting conception in itself. But there is a vertical differentiation into 7. But each of these represents a different quality. There is also a horizontal differentiation, such that if you take white light and break it into 3 rays, you can, or 3 pigments, because that's what we're most familiar with. We have red, yellow, and blue. And if we reflect them back on themselves, we have secondary colors. And then we reflect them all on top of each other, and we have the 7th being an indigo, which is a mix of the primary and secondary colors. We have all 7 of those colors. This is a horizontal differentiation, that you can't say that red is more or less evolved than blue or green or yellow or anything else. It's a qualitative type of division. And so we're seeing in the cosmos, and we would expect in the cosmos, both then a vertical differentiation of higher and lower types of beings, and we would expect a horizontal differentiation of beings into all of the 7 different kinds of manifest flavors, so that there is a complete and perfect balance and experience of the manifestation. Now, this was not done like when the divine manifest as 7 planets, or when individualities took on the quality of one of the 7 colors. These are often called 7 rays. It wasn't like we were culled out and saying, well, you go on this one, you go on, they weren't given like numbers from 1 to 7. You go on this one, this one, this one. There is I don't know exactly how this is done, but it is done internally. It's not a culling process. It's done as an internal change. And this is something that goes so deep, it goes into all the levels of creation. Because even if you go out tonight on a clear night like tonight and look at the stars, you will see that they have basically 7 colors. And that there's a relationship between all the blue stars, a relationship between all the yellow stars and all of the garnet stars. They're all similar. So apparently even when the divinities that are now manifest as individual stars came into being in their individuation, they also went through this kind of division. It's called the parent star. Whether you're a yellow person or a red person or a green person, individual, that depends on what star you're relating to. This is not something you can tell from a horoscope, and it's not something you can tell with very simple clairvoyance. You have to have a profound clairvoyance. You have to go all the way back to the beginning when we came out of chaos in the 4th revolution of the Earth period, and this differentiation started to take place into the different flavors of people. If you can follow an individuality all the way back to there, you will then see that there is a parent quality or a parent star or a parent color that they're associated with in all their lives. There are things where for a few lives a person may be working with a given quality and may have a given color for a few lives, or there may be a period of history that is a red period of history that may last some 300 years or something like that. Or there may be some that last for a few thousand years, and you may be born in that because, periods of time also have qualities, just like sort of like music resolves from one chord to another chord to another chord, and it has a different quality with each chord that it's resolving through. The tones, the pitches, and the feelings all change. But to find the constant, the parent color is something that you have to find it when it comes out from the differentiation out of chaos, not by anything local. So that the people who try to give you a ray, one of 7 rays, most of the people who are doing that are not properly qualified to do that. It's something that takes a very, very deep understanding. Probably it won't really become manifest until you've actually gone through all of the lesser mysteries and have gone through all of the different types of lessons that we're going to go through as humans in the Earth period, and as you come into your own as an adept, as a divinity, that you will take on your own real color when you have those variant experiences. Yes.
I was going to ask, would you tend to think that everybody that you are around are the same ray? Or
No.
Everybody's mixed up together?
No. I would tend to think that very often we're brought to given kinds of experiences with people because we need a clashing of colors, or because we need a toning of a yellow with an orange or something like that. When it gets into the very, very deep spiritual work, where there is really a true harmony that goes well beyond a national harmony, or we both like cheese or something like that. When you get to the level of your basic creative being and you're doing you're doing magical healing type of work, that then you resonate with people and you work together in that way. Okay, it's not a subject I really wanted to get into, but I just wanted to point out that the differentiation again that is taking place both horizontally and vertically in the macrocosm is also taking place in the microcosm. It's taking place horizontally into all of humanity being divided into 7 rays, and it's taking place vertically in humanity in that we go through different kinds of races and then different kinds of cultures and such like that, and there are different periods of time when we have different experiences. All right. Now we're ready, I guess, to go back to some things we talked about last year. And we're going to talk about the manifesting principle itself, which is fairly easy to describe because we have similar notions from physics, though they're not quite exactly the same. It's the concept of centrifugal versus centripetal force. Actually, in physics, there really isn't such a thing as a centrifugal or centripetal force. They're really manifestations of straight line momentum with a normal being hooked onto them. I don't know how to talk to them, how to put it in physics terms. I'm not a physicist, but I can realize that they're both expressions of a simpler kind of manifestation, simpler principle. All right. When we talked about the desire world, last year we talked about the principle of attraction and repulsion. And we said people who give out love attract other people to them. People who selfishly pull away repulse other people. Something very similar takes place in any creative activity. If we're doing a meditation or if we're creating a solar cosmos, the same thing takes place. Only we're talking about it now in terms of a non-selfish statement. We're just going to talk about it in terms of the direction of motion. If we make the sacrifice and turn our consciousness inward with greater and greater concentration and with greater and greater intensity, several things start to happen. In general, we enliven and we activate everything. You know, like what was previously asleep now becomes awake. We become so awake that we hear all the cars passing by, and there are all sorts of things that distract us because we're aware of more things. We've brought our life, our consciousness, our attention to more things. Everything seems to, I hate to use the word, seems to vibrate. Everything becomes much more sharp and distinct. But also something else takes place. When we do that, we set things spinning. And usually, the first thing we set spinning is the vortex of the desire body. That's centered in the forehead. In fact, probably a lot of early meditators will be surprised when they get in the intensity of prayer and they'll see like a huge pinwheel of light in the center of their forehead, and further on, it'll seem like from that center of light, which will go faster and faster, and then it'll become like an open, brilliant center of light into which you can actually crawl, or you put your consciousness into, and radiating out from that will be like waves of light that carry off to the distance of the cosmos. This is the same thing that we were talking about with the desire world. So the first thing that happens is everything is brought to a pitch of excitement. Then things are brought to a state of spin, and from that inward turningness, things radiate out in waves. This is what happens in an individual interning or in a divine interning. Remember, we're getting now down to the nitty-gritty of the formation of the solar system, which is the physical body of God, the planets themselves, and how that is accomplished. Now, the same thing, there's another thing. For example, if a person takes a great fright when turning inward, instead of the pinwheels being this way, the pinwheels will be this way, this from the inside looking out. They'll look like that, and the person will have an involuntary kind of clairvoyance. They'll get a fright, and everything will get bright and intensified that way. It's not the same thing as making a loving, voluntary sacrifice. The reason I bring this up is because the direction of the spin says something about the state of the consciousness. From the inside, when you're looking from the inside out, when things go like this, make a Triskion out of it. I just learned something about the Triskion, and I can't remember what it was. It was a very interesting fact in nature. I wish I could remember it. So there was a reason why a Triskion is a shield. It's a three-winged, like yin-yang symbol on a center that the warriors used to have on their shields. But there are things in nature that take the Triskion form that have an analogous function spiritually, and I can't remember what it is. Too bad. It's been a nice little side trip because it's been a serious night tonight. No side trips. The direction of the motion indicates the state of consciousness, whether one is involving or evolving. From the inside out, it means one thing, and from the outside in, it means another thing. So we're talking about intensity of consciousness, the formation of how clear this vibratory circle is, and the direction that it goes is a direct expression of the consciousness, the quality of the consciousness, and the nature of the divine. The rings that form at various levels out represent logical states of consciousness. We're talking about like standing waves in the cosmos. Like if we sing or if we blow on a flute, we produce a standing wave. And where the different nodes are on that wave are where planets form in the cosmos. And there is something about the nature of the logic of the divine that is related to the way these rays ring off from the center of manifest being and the quality of the different beings that are evolving on these different planets. And it isn't only these planetary, we talked earlier about the different layers or the different realms, the different levels of existence are themselves planetary in nature. That's a vertical manifestation, and now we're talking about a horizontal one. But there's going to be some vertical qualities in it too, because it isn't just that simple. When we think of all of the cross manifestations in the cosmos, it's very, very complicated. In fact, that's a sideline corollary feature of all of this. The more singular and simple and pointed the concentration is in this kind of manifestation, the more complex the ramifications from it become. Like when people say that, oh, you mystery students, you're always dealing with the complexities and you've got an answer for everything. It's not true. You cannot progress in the mysteries or have this kind of knowledge or understanding without having a compensating simplicity. Unless there is that single-mindedness, that very simple reunification with the divine, all the complexity does is lead you off almost to a degree of insanity, that there are so many things that can just draw you away. So there must be a simplicity and a single-minded concentration to sustain this sort of activity. All right. So then, as the divine is coming out of cosmos and going into its meditation, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and brings its concentration to a point. And as it does so things become more and more graphic. Now, what we're talking about here, you can actually do this if you get one of those old round wash tubs, circular wash tub. You fill it up with water and get some oil paints or something, an oily substance that has colors, and set it spinning. So this is your tub. You will find that as you set it spinning, there will be, everything will be going around like this, but at various places from the center of the spin, there will form whirlpools. And the oil will center around those whirlpools, and it will be, those vortices will be just like out of the etheric chaos, there's a whirlpool that is a concentration of the divine, but also each little whirlpool is a concentration of the divinities associated with that planet. And in that, the particular nature is drawn together to form a ball. If you go, you can watch it. If you go where there's a little stream or where there's a little creek, you see that where there are whirlpools, you'll find, just throw some chaff or something like that in there. It'll form like a little ball right in there. And this is what happens with the cosmos. Until the whole activity, this doesn't happen all at once. The balls don't all form at once. They form one at a time until finally there is that center where even the internal light becomes manifest as an external light. It becomes manifest as the sun. And we're talking about the birth of the whole solar system. And when we're talking about the solar cosmos, the meditation is the whole of it and not just the sun itself. It's the whole system. But there's a differentiation within the system, and that differentiation within it has a logic, and that logic is set up again by the numbers from 1 to 7, and it's a circular mode. All right.
Would the individualistic particles tend to cooperate and come together in that mass, or would they tend to be the ones that would disperse? What would be the quality with the more social?
I'm going to come to that. That's just what we're going into now. All right, so the whole thing is the sun with a larger S, not the most capital S, but the whole solar system is the sun. And the whole thing is waking up. It's becoming more light. And as this is a funny thing, it really is a rejection process as well as a creation process. We couldn't all be in the sun. We would burn up. And it is because there is this differentiation that different beings are at different levels of manifestation, not only humans but other kingdoms, that they have to be at greater or lesser distances from the sun. And that is to say that out of kindness, if you're meditating, if you set something outside of yourself, you can know yourself and understand it better. Its relationship of coming to its own being, it knows itself better relative to the center of truth by being distanced from that center of truth, because too much light it couldn't understand. It would lose consciousness, just like the disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane fell asleep because the vibrations of the cosmic Christ through Jesus at that time were so intense that they just couldn't handle it, and they just conked right out. And so from one point of view, things have to be thrown off. Everything that isn't the most highly evolved has to be thrown off until finally it comes inward to be a sun as we know the sun now. We're talking about that object that we see out there every day. So it is a rejection process in the same way that there is a rejection process with throwing things off by turning inward that works with the law of attraction and repulsion in the desire world. The same principle is there, but it isn't a rejection saying, those guys out in Uranus, they're terrible. We have to put them out there because they're dogs. They can't do anything. It isn't quite like that. It's much more of a loving kind of thing. Now, this is to be remembered that these things are at a harmonic. That there is a harmony and that there is a logic, just like there is the logic to the tones of the scale, or just like there is a logic from one color to the next color to the next color, that there's a perfect harmony. You realize that when you look at a rainbow or you look at a sunset and you see one color blending into another and you see pretty much the full spectrum and you see them at a quality that is equal with each other, like there is a hue differentiation, that there is that quality that you become peaceful. You know what I'm saying? That if you see opposite colors, you get excited. Like birds and bees and even humans get excited. If you look, the most common things in flowers are opposite colors. There's excitement there because that's what that kind of profile differentiation, the most common being yellow and violet, is what allows the bees or other insects to find the flower. So there's a different kind of quality that is the complementary qualities as to seeing the whole spectrum. And when we're looking at all the planets together, we're looking at, you might say, God's rainbow. We're looking at the rainbow bridge, and then in the center is the center of all of the energy and power and such like that. And we're talking again about this gradated from being from high to low. Again, we have the same. How are we doing on time? Oh, good. It's going to work out just about 90 minutes exactly. We have the same thing that we talked about, I believe it was last time, when we said that there is a law of just compensation, that in Dante's Inferno, at the center of the earth are Judas, Brutus, and Cassius, the treacherous ones. But also at the center of the earth is the focus of the solar Christ into the earth. Or in the moon, we have the human people that have not only laggard, but have caused themselves to be dropped off completely. The dropouts, the human dropouts at the moon, very evil, magical types of beings. We're going to get to them in a little bit when we talk about Lemuria. But also we have, working with them, at the opposite extreme, we have Jehovah and the angels. So wherever there is something high, there is something low. And this is the way it is also, that there are very high spiritual intelligences associated with very low spiritual intelligences, and at the same time there's a qualitative thing that one deserves the other, because the kind of activity done at the center of the earth is different than the kind of activity done at the moon. There's a qualitative difference, quality difference as well as a qualitative difference. All right. So the whole mass is spinning slowly. And as it spins slowly, it throws off within itself the first of the planets. It forms a whirlpool, and Uranus is formed. And then the cosmos spins a little bit more swiftly, and a second whirlpool is formed, and then Saturn is formed in that whirlpool, and then Jupiter. Then we have that belt of asteroids, and then we have Mars being formed, and then we have the Earth being formed, and then Venus and Mercury, and finally the Sun is a sun. It's centered on itself, and the light is there. and we have our septenary type of division. Now, this says that, as we know in astrology, that there is a quality difference between each of the planets. There's not only this distance, it's not only the distance, but there's actually a quality. It's like saying that something of this wavelength has a pitch like one note, or a pitch like another color. So there is a logic in the harmonic, there is a logic in the speed, but it carries to other things. There's a logic actually even in the size, because things are out of order, because the beings evolved on Jupiter are not more lowly evolved beings than those on Mars, but because Jupiter's a large planet, it's put out there to sort of even out things, and because it has that large mass, it's capable of doing other things. So it's not just a simple kind of thing. All right, so there is a difference going from the more lowly to the more highly evolved. Now this works out in really interesting ways that even the constitution of this stuff, if you look at planetary geology or planetary chemistry, the constitution is different. When you get out here, you have the planets that are mostly frozen gases, methane and things like that, ammonia. But when you get in here, from Mars in, you have the more metallic planets that have actually metallic cores and are capable of magnetic fields. Again, Jupiter being an exception. Jupiter is almost a second part sun. It's the only planet that actually gives off light as well as just reflecting sunlight. If Jupiter were just a little larger, which means that the relationship of the planetary spirit of Jupiter, if that were related to the sun in such a way that was a little bit more intense, we'd have a binary star. The stars are like people, because there's a lot of binaries out there, just like they aren't all just single stars. And some people, that's like human beings. A lot of them are bachelors like me, and a lot of them pair up more easily and work better in pairs. And so they form, I don't want to get any specific kinds of notions that it all has to be only one way. All right. This harmonic is described by what is called by the Polish, I don't know how he was Polish because his name isn't like that, the astronomer Bode, B-O-D-E, or Bode, such that if the distance here between the Sun and Mercury is 4, then the distance between the Sun and Venus is 7, and the distance between the Sun and Venus this is this is +3, and it goes +6. 6 and 4 are 10. So the Earth is called 1 Bode, 1.0 Bode, and this is 0.7, this is 0.4. And this gets doubled again. This is 12, and that makes this 16. This is out to the asteroids, it's 24, which makes this 30. And that makes this 48, that makes this 52. I guess my arithmetic is good, but you get the whole principle. Now, the interesting thing is there is the asteroid belt here. We're going to talk about all of this a lot later, about wars in heaven. We're going to have to go back to earlier periods and talk about things. We've got a lot of things to do. As this goes on, we're going to bring in more and more things. Pretty soon we're going to bring in the Bible, and then we're going to start bringing in, the same way we brought in stragglers, we're going to bring in initiation and the mysteries and how you can move ahead in time and all of those sorts of things. And it turns out that there was intended to be a planet here. And Uranus wasn't intended to take place as it was. Things were supposed to go out to Saturn. But Uranus filled in after, was put in as a fill-in after this, back in the moon period, after there was a war in heaven, and some beings made themselves unfit to come into this kind of experience correctly. The universe had to be accommodated. Within the archetype, within the harmonic plan of the universe, there still is the harmonic line there, but it's only pieces of clutter that have solidified and have been captured from moons that are departing out of the cosmos and such are captured in there. And for this reason, it's very interesting. Bode's law breaks down between Saturn and Uranus. Uranus is just a little too far out, as I remember it. And after Uranus, a different harmonic takes on with Neptune and Pluto, such that if this distance is 1, then the distance to Neptune is 2, and the distance to Pluto is 3, or at least in time of rotation around the center of the Sun. It's a 1, 2, 3 relationship, relating again. It's beautiful because you have here the relationship of the 7 manifest. If you actually had this here, then you have the 3 transcendental qualities associated with the spirit here. It's interesting also that the Luciferic qualities, some people believe that this planet in here, that is the asteroid belt, now used to be called Lucifer. And that the Luciferic qualities of too much independence, as well as the freedom that was given to us, are both ruled by Uranus, which makes Uranus sort of a cosmic interloper that has sort of the best of 2 worlds by making a very great sacrifice as it does. I'm going to just very quickly just breeze through here. We've got the ideas. Now you recognize how this works on different levels. That by raising your pitch inside of yourself and setting up these waves at different frequencies, when you set up the vortex rotating inside of yourself, you bring yourself at the same time to different qualities of consciousness. You feel a Venusian level or you feel a Martial level, and you're opened up to that plane. So what happens here, we're talking about the stuff of creation is the stuff of initiation. And initiation is a breaking into the creative process. And by creating our solar system inside of ourselves, in our prayers or in our meditations, we are indeed tuning into different planes of existence, different places of existence. These are the principles that are important. All of the other things, they're important if you live on Neptune. Supposedly, these are visitor planets having to do with transcendent qualities. And then within Mercury, there is another quality that's called Vulcan that has to do with fulfilling all of evolution and then being reassimilated back into the Sun, and clouds of matter being reabsorbed into the Sun. That Vulcan really isn't quite like a planet, but more like masses of solar matter coming back. Some people would say into the black hole, but I don't want to get into those kinds of, those sorts of things. All right. So roughly then, we see that there are different grounds for evolution on 7 different planets. There are different planetary spirits here. There's a different tonal quality, and there is a different vibratory level. In general, the children of one parent star are usually found manifesting on that planet star, but sometimes they do have experiences of incarnations on other planets. And ours is unique because we are the Earth planet in the Earth period. We are the 4th in. No, we're not. The 5th in. That we are the only planet where things take place because of our external kind of consciousness. We're the only planet where the evolution takes place outside on the surface, which is, again, why the Earth period is called the Earth period. And this is where we repeatedly reincarnate. Most beings reincarnate within the planet on the different inner levels, though they do have some external manifestation, because our fall into mineralization was such that we brought more of the other beings into the mineralization more than was intended. Okay. I guess that's about all I want to say. We have now looked at the birth of the solar system and the Earth's part in it. And now from here on in, mostly for the next quite a few lectures, well, maybe only get 2 or 3 done this year because I'm not so sure how long. I'm starting to think about gardens and things like that. And we'll have a big recess to next fall. You recognize that compared to what we've talked about in the other classes, this is much more to home. And as we go on now for a while, it's going to keep getting closer to home. until we're actually where we are right now, and then we're going to sort of look ahead to what's in store for us by taking in the experience of the things from the past and sort of regenerating them into new spiritual creations outwardly. All right. Any questions? We have now seen how the chick is born out of the cosmic egg during Easter week. And it's a very detailed process, but it's not something that's foreign to us. There's a lot of very practical information that is right to home. So next time we will start talking about our evolution coming into the earth and being born with the earth. Yes?
What are some of the qualities of eternity in which beings find themselves in this rest that you spoke of at the beginning that would be so profound that a plant would become an animal? What would be some of the interior realization and the manifestation of divine being that would be such an inspiration? How could you describe that?
Something that has been able to take light and specialize it into life so that other beings can specialize life and vitality and growth. When that experience, other than just being there as a lump, when that experience of life that brings something into a living, growing kind of experience, when that experience is drawn inward and related to a being that is extremely dispersonal, the effect is that very